Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. How are you, everybody? My name is Sherry Friedberg, and I'm thrilled to be here this morning with you. Making challah has always been one of those things that I wanted to do, but was so nervous because I thought it would be too difficult and I wasn't going to get the braids straight or right. So I can't wait, as I'm sure you can't either, to learn from the best, the Challah Fairy, Lee Fisher Schlissel. Before I turn over the program, I just want to we're going to do this immediately because we need to get the dough to rise and we need to have some downtime. If you have any questions for Chana during the program, please use the chat or the raise the hand feature on the computer, and I will get the question to Chana Lee and hopefully she will answer them. Chana Lee, take it away.
So hi, thank you so much everyone for joining. This is all a dream come true because I've been at home for the last 3.5 months. And I've been so happy to be home, but I still am home. We go into bake twice a week for our commercial business, and start making the dough right now. I'm going to put, there we go. There's my bowl. I'm using a glass bowl so everyone can see. We're going to first make the dough. We're going to mix it. If anybody likes to use a glove, they can use a glove. If you want to, you can use your hands to mix it. But we're going to start right away. I would like everyone to put into the bowl their 1 cup of warm water. I always find that if I use warm water, the dough is going to rise much, much nicer. Okay, we're going to put in the warm water. We're going to add, I have everything prepared ahead of time. I prepared it last night because I come from major European, German background. I have to have everything ready beforehand. I'm a very, very punctual person. And then we're going to add the sugar. The sugar helps the yeast to start activating. The recipe calls for a 1/2 cup of sugar. If you would like to, you could add a little bit less. It doesn't really matter. I just want to let you know.
I have one quick question. I'm sorry. It's about an expired Fleischmann yeast. Can they use that? It's from March 5th, 2020, or a jar of
100% they can use it. 100%. 100%. Listen,
Okay.
a lot of things that we buy, they put an expiration date on it because they want you to throw it out and get something new. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with it. And it's dry yeast, right? It's a dry yeast or wet yeast?
Yes, dry yeast.
Yeah, they should have no problem. So we're going to put all these items into the bowl and we're going to mix it around a little bit. Okay, you could put in, if you have a sugar problem, you can also make this dough without any sugar at all. You could make it with a little bit of honey. As long as your yeast activates and you see it bubbling, you should actually have no problem making any kind of dough because it's all about the yeast. If the yeast activates, you can add anything into your bowl. So we're going to give it just a few minutes over here. And while we're waiting for it to bubble up a little bit, I'm going to start talking. And then maybe I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Challah Fairy. Let me show my face now again. So when I was a young mommy growing up, raising my children in Rockland County, I had 2 young children at home. After I had my second child, I had been working for my grandfather in his real estate company, and I was traveling to Brooklyn 3 days a week. So after I had my second child, my grandfather calls me up and he says, Hanali, okay, work is over. You're going to become a stay-at-home mom. And I was really not happy at all because I didn't need anyone making decisions for me, but I decided it was really the best thing. And what does a stay-at-home mommy do besides for taking care of 2 little children who were 16 months apart? And I decided I was going to start baking challah every week. So I bought myself a bosh. We used a recipe that my sister in Switzerland gave me. It's the challah recipe is so interesting because we basically all use the same 7 ingredients of water, flour, salt, yeast, eggs, oil, and what are we missing over here? Flour, salt, whatever, sugar, and egg. And every single person's challah comes out completely different, but we're basically using the same 7 ingredients. Anyway, every week I would bake 6 challahs, and every week I needed to get rid of my 6 challahs because we're not eating all of them and I wasn't freezing them. So every week I would go to my friend's house, and right before Shabbat, after I knew that the mailman was there, I would put a challah into her mailbox. And every week, without fail, she would call me and she would say, "Ooh, the Challah Fairy was here." Now, I don't know. I regularly thank her. I haven't spoken to her in a long time. She's gone through a very interesting journey in her life, as I have. And I'm the Challah Fairy because of her. Like, I never would have thought in my wildest imaginations that this would be what I would ever be calling myself. So I started baking challah, and then I had a friend who had a store in Muncie, a children's clothing store owned by one of my old friends. And I started going in and selling my challahs. Like, people would say, "Oh, this is the Challah Fairy. She makes the best challah." And I started delivering to places. First, I started in Muncie. Then I went to Teaneck and Englewood, West Side, East Side, Scarsdale, New Rochelle. And then at some point along the way, I stopped everything. But I'm going to stop private deliveries almost. But we're going to continue making the dough now, because if you look at my thing, it's really bubbling nicely. You know, it's like, it looks like a little puffy. It looks a little puffy. So now we're going to add the salt. We could really basically add everything. We're going to add the salt. It's a teaspoon of salt. We're going to add a quarter, let me take off my glove. We're going to add a quarter cup of oil. Now, don't forget, you can add a little bit more, you can add a little bit less. Nothing's going to happen. As long as your yeast is activated and started fermenting, we are good to go. Now, I had in the original recipe that I gave everyone, it had no eggs. So I just want to tell you a little bit about adding eggs when you're baking challah. Eggs makes a dough fluffy, and it gives it a little bit more, shelf life, like it will last a little bit longer. You do not have to add an egg to your challah. Now I'm going to tell you a big Challah Fairy secret. 1 second. I'm going to give you a Challah Fairy secret. In my original recipe that I use for my challah that I sell in my store, every 6 challahs, which means every 5 pounds of flour, I use only 1 egg. Only 1 egg. That's why when I tell you about making the dough now, it doesn't call for an egg, but some people like to add an egg. Today I'm actually going to add in a half an egg. Why? Because we did a challah Zoom event last week, and I put in the whole egg, and I just felt it was a little bit eggy. I don't really like that really eggy taste in the dough. So I'm adding in half of an egg, and the flour that I'm using, the recipe calls for 3 cups of flour. I'm actually going to measure it out properly, because when you're doing a recipe like this, specifically the flour, if you add in too much flour, then you have to start adding in a little bit extra water, and we don't really need to do that. So here's my measuring cup. I'm going to start off with adding, a knife is the best thing to straighten this thing out, because it always goes straight. Okay, we're going to add in, first I'm going to add in 2.5 cups of flour. Why? Because I'd rather add in a little bit extra flour afterwards, like approximately 2.5 cups. Okay, now we're going to start mixing it. You can mix it first. I'm mixing it with a fork, because that's the way everyone's going to be mixing it at home. But I just want to let you know that if you go online on Amazon, there is a mixing tool that's used for mixing dough by hand. It's a little spiral thing at the end, and it has a long metal handle. And I don't know, Amazon has been my best friend for the last 4 months. It's been amazing. I don't think my UPS guy must think that we're completely nuts. So here is my dough right now. It's very, very wet. I'm going to add more flour now. And now, starting now, I'm going to mix my dough by hand. Okay, I'm taking it off here like this. I'm going to mix it by hand. And I'm going to wear a glove, because after I'm done, I can just flip off the glove and not have to worry about it. But
Hannah, do you have a weight on the flour? The weight of the flour that you put?
3 cups of flour. I could tell you what it weighs. We could just look it up on Google.
Yeah.
One of those easy things. Do you mean like in grams or in ounces?
I don't know. The question was asked. I don't know if it's grams or ounces, so I do not know.
Give me a second. While you speak, after we finish mixing the dough, while you speak about Federation, I'm going to look it up and I'm going to have the answer for you.
And can you use a KitchenAid mixer to mix, or a mixer?
Absolutely, 100%. I'm mixing it by hand for the simple reason that I know most of you are mixing it by hand, and I want to just show you how easy it is to mix it by hand. I think I added a drop too much flour here. Like, I don't want to have all this extra flour here, so I'm just going to toss it into the sink. And if you see my dough, it looks really, really nice. I just want to say what after we finish, after we let the dough rise a little bit while you're speaking, while we leave it on the counter to rise, I usually put a little bit of oil on top of it because it gives it that smooth finish, and it allows it to, you know, stay good feeling, so that when we're ready to braid it, it's much easier to work with. So I'm just pouring a little oil into my hand, and here's the actual dough. Now, you could, if you're baking at home, you could double this dough, and you could cut the dough in half. You could put half of it into the freezer, and then at a later date, just take out the dough, until it frosts a little bit, and then treat it like it would be a regular dough. The reason why I'm doing this amount is because for learning purposes, it's just so much nicer for us to have something that we can work with well, and we don't have any issues with. So look at my dough here. It's really, really nice.
Oh, lovely.
And I think we should give everybody another minute or two to finish mixing their dough, because I'm not sure that everyone is ready at the same time with mixing the dough. But I think the dough came out really, really nice. Look at it. If you feel that your dough is too lumpy, and you feel like you didn't add enough, like you put in a little bit too much flour, you can add a drop more water to it. It's going to take you a few more minutes to knead the dough, but you should definitely add a little bit more water to it, because today's a very, very humid day, right? Today's super humid. I just like want to make sure that everyone's dough is going to work well, and they're going to be able to work with it nicely when we're ready to start doing the braiding. So I'm going to put my dough here on the side. What's your first name? Oh, Sherry. I'm going to give Sherry the floor. I just want to let you know that I'm expecting an important phone call. I don't know when it's going to come. I hope it's not going to come within the time period that I'm here. But if it does, then we're going to just, we'll let Sherry do a little speaking, and it will only take like 2 minutes, but I hope it doesn't come. I'm just praying it doesn't come. I said my little Tehillim before I started, just so that everything goes well. So this is all part of the going well process. Do you have any questions that came up in the meantime?
I think I got most of them to you. Let me just check. Hang on 1 second. No, somebody actually answered the flour. 1 cup is 4 to 5 ounces or 120 grams. So we got that.
Thank you.
And they said, say more about the timing we can freeze the dough. About the timing that
how long they can freeze the dough for?
Yes.
I would say indefinitely, but not for a crazy amount. I also want to tell you, this is an extremely, extremely easy dough to work with. You can take this, you can make from this dough, you can make from a pizza. I want to tell everybody before you start your spiel about the Federation. Mm-hmm. I don't know if people know this, but one of the secrets of a what's it called, a quarantine house during the summer is to have a thing. You don't have to keep it on your counter. You could keep it inside. It's called the Betty Crocker Pizza Maker, and it's a red round thing. I could show you what it looks like. You don't have to turn on your oven. It is the most amazing piece I have ever owned. I have it for a few years. I actually bought a second one to use for meat, so that I can make, like, let's say I make in it in pita breads. You could use this dough to actually make pita breads. You take a little ball, you roll it out with a dough with a roller, and you put them into the pizza maker. You don't have to turn on your oven. I just want to show it to you. Just 1 second. It's right here.
Hannah, when you freeze the dough, do you freeze it before it rises or after?
Oh, for sure, before it rises.
Okay.
Yes, before it rises. It's even going to rise a drop in the freezer until it becomes retarded, and then it stops rising. You know what I'm saying? Until it retards and stops rising. Even if you put it in the refrigerator overnight, and let's say you make it at nighttime, you want your kids to make dough to make challah the next day, you can make this dough at nighttime, stick it in your fridge, take it out in the morning, let it rise for an hour, and you can let your kids make challah with it. Now, I don't use anything that's dairy when I do like filling stuff for the challah, because we don't, you know, because we don't mix meat and dairy. But if people want to do, you could make with it, what's that schmear stuff, that Nutella. You could make little Nutella. You could fill it like with Nutella inside and roll up the dough and then knot it and put like little crumbs or chocolate chips. It's a great activity for kids. If people are home, I mean, my sales of my challah in the supermarkets have declined in the last 3 months exponentially, and it's because parents are home. They need to have activities for their children, and they bake challah. And if you're baking challah at home by yourself, it doesn't matter how it comes out. You're making it. It's amazing. That's it. So I'm going to give the floor over to you, Sherry, to talk about the Federation and give your introduction.
One last question. When you set the dough to rise, do you cover it, and does it have to be in a warm place, or just leave it out on the counter?
So it's very, very humid today. I don't actually have my air conditioner on right now. I'm going to just leave it on the counter. You can cover it with another bowl. You can cover it with a towel. You can cover it with plastic wrap. It likes like the heat of the dough lets it rise. But don't put it on top. Don't put it on top of a stovetop where your oven has been turned on, because the heat rises in there and it will start baking the bottom of your dough, and then your dough is not going to rise and it's not going to bake properly. And don't put your dough near your animals, because pets love raw dough. Been there, done that.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let me just take over for a few minutes. I'll give your voice a rest. Thank you, Federation, for allowing us this opportunity to see Hannah make challah. And I've been involved with Federation for a very long time, and I'm so proud of the work that Federation does today and every day. And during this weird, unprecedented time in our history, Federation has done an outstanding job assessing the needs of the community and allocating resources to make sure those needs are being met. So for an example, just last week, PTAC's Kosher Delicatessen had 50 frozen meals to donate from a wedding that was canceled due to the pandemic. And we all know stories about that. They called Federation, and Federation knew exactly what to do and where that donation should go. We connected with JAD, which is a residential home for Jewish adults with developmental disabilities. And last Shabbat, the residents were overjoyed with their special meal, excuse me. Federation has the resources, access, and influence to make these types of connections to keep our communities strong. They know where their needs are, and they try to make sure that those needs are met and people have better lives. If you have already made your donation to Federation, we thank you. If you haven't made your gift yet, today is the day, because all new and increased gifts are eligible for a match from a generous family in our neighborhood, in our community. So after you make your challah, please consider making a gift for Federation. So now, hopefully, if you have any other questions.
Do you have a Cash App or a Zelle account that we could just send money to?
We have a website that you could probably send money. There's a website. There's a Federation website that you can send money to for donations.
Okay.
And we will get that out to everybody on this challah making class. Any other questions? Anything else you would like to say, Hannah? I do have some. Let me see if we have more questions here.
Okay, awesome.
I think some of these questions will be answered in the recipe. And we've just sent out the website, the site for you to send in donations. I'm sorry. Yes.
Give me a for instance of a question.
Okay. Please review how you covered the dough with oil and how did you cover the bowl to let it rise.
Okay, so I actually didn't cover it because I just have it
Correct.
sitting over here. But I just take a little oil in my hand, like this. Just a little oil in my hand. Let me bring it down over here. And I just go like this. I just make nice, smooth it over. And here, when you cover it, see, this is the forgiving part of the event, of the challah baking. You just take a little shmata or anything, or a dish towel, or anything. You could do plastic wrap. It'll just seal it in nicely, and it will. And the heat, when it rises, it helps the dough to rise. Now, because we're at an event over here and we have a limited amount of time, we could actually start braiding the dough already, like in the next few minutes. Maybe I'll talk for a few more minutes, and then we could start braiding the dough. But when and being that I'm making dough from very, very small amount of flour, it's not eligible for a blessing of hafrashat challah. But I'm just going to tell you about the blessing that we make. When we make a blessing of hafrashat challah, hafrashat means to separate, and challah is the challah. This is actually called the dough. When we pull a piece off, this is like when we pull a piece off, this would be called the challah. This is called the challah, and this is the part that we make the blessing on. I just wanted to show everybody when you are mixing dough and you're leaving it to rise, you should take all the parts of the dough that are bumpy and like this, and if you bring them all underneath like this and you just tuck them under, your dough is going to rise so much nicer. Like there won't be any bumps. The bumps is what makes the challah like not look pretty after you braid it. But it's really very, very easy to work with. I'm sure everybody's dough came out like this. I'm really sure about that. And it's just, so when we do the blessing, go ahead.
No, go ahead, go.
When you do the blessing of hafrashat challah, it's a special time of prayer. When you make the blessing, after you make the blessing, like people do different challah baking events when they have somebody who's unfortunately sick, somebody who's looking for a child to get married. They'll try to bring together 40 people who will say the blessing at the same day, and they pray for this person, for their health. They pray for a person to find the right match in their lives. And I don't know if we have any men on this baking event, but the mitzvah, the special good deed of baking challah, was given as a special thing for women. I don't want to be any against men or anything baking. I think it's amazing that men bake also, but it is a special time for women to pray, because it was during the temple that this was one of the special things that women did. And the reason why we're supposed to have, like Friday night when we do our Shabbat dinner, and obviously Shabbat morning also, you're supposed to have 2 challahs. Why are we supposed to have 2 challahs? Because it's to remember when the Jews were in the desert and they got a double portion of manna that fell from heaven on Friday that was for the Shabbat. So that's why we do 2 challahs. And I'm going to also tell you something very interesting. The reason why we are supposed to, I'm sure everybody knows that when you set the table for Shabbat, you always cover the challah, right? You have a cover on top of the challah before you make the blessing on it.
Right.
And the reason is because in the very religious world, there is a list. When you have a table full of foods, there is a list of what you're supposed to make a blessing on first. And the first and most important thing that gets a blessing is bread. Bread comes first, wine comes second, cookies and cakes comes next, food that grows from the ground comes next.
Wow.
Fruit, I think fruit, stuff that comes from trees goes first, then from the ground, and then comes the last bracha, which is shahakol, which means everything. Everything else goes under the auspices of a shahakol niyeh b'dvaro, that everything that God makes was done by him. So because the first most important blessing is bread, but we're really making kiddush first on the wine, we're making the blessing over the wine first, we don't want to embarrass the challah. So therefore we cover it and then we uncover it afterwards so that the challah is not embarrassed, that we're not making a blessing on it. Listen, everyone can think whatever they want. We have traditions in our Jewish life and we keep to them. And that's part
That
of it.
is so interesting. That is
Right?
so interesting. Yes, two questions.
Okay.
Somebody wants to see the Betty Crocker oven again because I interrupted with a question.
Sure.
And then I have another question for you.
By the way, it's been here. Look at the inside of it. It has a lip on both sides. It's just an amazing piece of equipment.
What do you put in there? The challah?
I make pizza. No, not challah. I make pizza in here.
Right.
And when I make the pizza, I usually roll out the dough on a piece of parchment paper first, put the toppings on top, and then just take the parchment paper and put it straight in. In fact, yesterday when I went to visit my parents, I bought my Betty Crocker machine. I brought them all the flour, salt, and yeast and everything. I made them a homemade dough over there. I made my father Pita Breads to leave over there. I made them pizza. And I also made them cauliflower pizza, my own homemade cauliflower pizza crust, which was outstanding. And if you want to, I can send everyone the recipe for it.
I would love it.
It's not like the cauliflower pizza crust where they tell you have to cook the cauliflower in water and then drain it and put it through a cheesecloth. This is the easiest thing ever. And I'm just like, I just love doing it. And because my children, I have 4 children, thank God. And one of my children is married, thank God. And that's where I became a grandmother. But I have 3 children and they all came back. One lives here with me at home and 2 of them came back home in the middle of March. And I've been a stay-at-home mommy. I cook lunch and dinner every single day. And I'm just loving it, and they love being home. And it's just, for me, it's been an amazing journey. I don't know, I don't want to be mean about COVID, but COVID for me has been an incredible blessing. I just feel really strange about it, but it's been amazing.
2 questions, sorry.
Sure.
My dough is not as smooth as yours. Somebody said I used a KitchenAid first, mixed it, and then used dough hook just for a few minutes.
Okay, so I really think that they must have added a little bit too much flour.
Okay.
I'm feeling a little bit too much flour. Is it possible? Is it possible that they can add a drop more water to their dough and mix it up again? Because that would be absolutely fine. It would definitely work.
Okay, and when do you add raisins or anything else to the challah?
Fantastic. That's a very, very good question. I like that. So if you want to add raisins, and you want to add raisins to the entire piece of dough, I would tell you that right before you add in like the last half cup of flour, add in the raisins. This way, when you mix the dough together, the raisins get mixed into the dough and it'll rise together with it and it'll be spread throughout the dough. If you want to do chocolate chips, you could do that also. When we make the dough in the store and we add raisins or chocolate chips, they get dumped straight into the machine. After the dough is finished mixing, it goes straight into the machine. And if the dough is too warm from the warm water, then sometimes the chocolates will melt right away, but we try not to do that. And it just mixes them throughout the dough much nicer.
Okay.
And then if you want to put in cinnamon, I suggest that you make like a little cinnamon mix and you punch the dough down and you put it inside and then you roll it up a little bit and then you make it like that. I think we're going to be ready now to, was that girl able to add a little bit more water to her dough?
She did not respond, so I do not know.
If she has her KitchenAid, she should put the dough back into the KitchenAid. Her KitchenAid is definitely strong enough to handle it. She should add it maybe an eighth of a cup of water and mix it again and then let it settle. It might feel like it's too much water, but sometimes as soon as it mixes in properly, the dough realizes that it needed the extra water.
Okay.
So you think we're ready? You think we're ready to start making the dough? Creating the challah?
I think so. I haven't gotten a response yet, so we're good to go.
Okay, so just to let you guys know that after I stopped, I was still doing deliveries when I opened up my first tiny commercial space in New City, and I was also blessed with finding the space that I had, even though it was tiny. But after I was in that tiny space for about 5 months, I was approached by one second. One of the attendees just texted me and she says to me, one second, I feel so bad. She says to me, My yeast looks and feels like it needs to go to the garbage. Don't throw it away. No, okay. Okay. You're only supposed to add the 3.5 cups of flour if you added the egg to your dough, just to let you know that. When I started my first commercial little space, I was approached by Reuben Gittleman. It was in New City. And I was approached by Reuben Gittleman. I don't know if anybody remembers that school. It was a real traditional run Jewish day school, something I would say along the lines of Solomon Schechter in New Jersey. And it was, and they approached me and they asked me if I could become a nut-free facility, which I agreed to immediately. And it was just like amazing. They asked me and I immediately said yes. Why did I say yes? Because my whole life, I just want to make people happy. Challah making makes people happy. If you're a nut-free facility, you can make everyone happy. If you're a nut facility, you can't make everyone happy. So I figured in order to be able to make more people happy, I'm just going to go nut-free. And because of being nut-free, I was able to sell challahs to so many different schools. Unfortunately, I can't do that right now. So we have to see what's going to be next year. But
excuse me, somebody complained their dough is watery. The dough.
Then tell them to add a little bit more flour. It's too liquidy. Tell them to add a little bit more flour to it and knead it nicely, like knead it into it.
Okay. I think everybody's going to do on their own time frame. We're going to watch you, and if they're not caught up, they will continue after we're done.
Okay, so I'm going to bring my, okay, I just made myself a little, while you were speaking, I made myself a little mixture for crumb topping. So this is basically, it's also a very forgivable kind of thing. You could add a 1/2 cup of flour, a 1/2 cup of sugar, and a little bit of oil. And I'm not really going to get my vanilla sugar. This is just so yummy. It doesn't really need anything. You can also take this thing and add a little cinnamon to it. Okay, and add a little cinnamon to it, and it becomes a cinnamon topping challah. So I'm going to take my beautiful dough, as everyone sees. Oh my gosh, it came out so gorgeous. Now, this is a very important thing that people don't know. When you take out your dough from your bowl, if your dough is a little bit too wet, do not add flour to it now. I mean, obviously that woman was an exception to the rule and her dough was too wet. But if your dough is sticky, don't add flour to it, because that's going to make your dough, your challahs, lumpy. Take a little oil in your hand. And smooth it on top of your dough. And your dough will become smooth again. I mean, look how gorgeous this dough is. And my dough is not more beautiful right now because I'm the Challah Fairy. My dough is just beautiful. Everyone's dough should actually look the same exact as this. I'm not being showy or anything, even though, you know, I just love what I do. Okay, so I'm going to cut my dough in half. Okay, use a good knife. And I'm going to set this on the side. Could be anywhere. Okay. Now I want to teach everyone how to make a round challah. When one of my children was in one of those nice little religious day camps in a school, not in a backyard, she came home every Friday with these cute, adorable round challahs. And I called the counselor and I asked her how she made them, and she told me. And I've been making this round challah since then. Of course, Rosh Hashanah time, when we make the Jewish New Year, when we make thousands of challahs, this is how we make our round challah. So I want to show you this. Okay, when you're cutting your challah into 4 pieces, always cut it in half first, because then your pieces are that much more even. In half first, and then each piece goes in half again. Okay, this is a very easy challah to make. See, 4 pieces. Now, because this dough is so flexible and so nice to work with, we literally just have to stretch them out a little bit. If you stretch them out too much, then your round challah is not going to be even, and it's going to be elongated. Okay, excuse me. Okay, so here we have 4 beautiful pieces of dough. They're a little bit clumpy on the. They're not clumpy. They're not super even on the bottom, but that's fine. This is. Okay, 4 pieces of dough, okay? This is how we make a round challah. It's very, very easy. Guys, if you don't know how to braid, so last week my son was working beside me because my son works for Spotify. So he was working on the other side of the counter and I was working on this side. He had no idea how to braid the challah, which I was actually happy about because I don't need him to know how to do braiding. He knows a lot of other stuff. Okay, so this is the first two. And here comes the third one on top. So it's an H with a little hangover. Oh, I like that, an H with a hang.
That's
hangover.
cute.
Like I call myself when I
Rolling
drink, call myself when I drink too much, hangover Hannah. Okay, so here, so we did like this. I can actually leave it straight. You know what? 1 second here. Let me take one of these guys from underneath my laptop. Good, cool. Okay. Oh, beautiful. Okay, that's perfect. So
Smart.
What? Okay,
Smart of you.
we're taking the fourth piece. Look at this, guys. We're putting it on top in the middle. See that? Okay, so it's a little, what's it called? When it's like, you know, basket weave. Okay, we're taking the bottom. If you don't know how to make a braid, we're going right over middle, left over middle. Okay, we're doing only like a few times like that. And then we're gonna do the same thing on the top. Right over the first one, left over the first one, right over the first one, left over the first one, and we're gonna pinch. Ah! Okay, and then we are going to take our little henties. We're gonna take the two ends, we're gonna tuck them under. Tuck them under, take these two, the sides that were the hangovers. We're gonna tuck them under, and look, we have the most prettiest little basket weave challah. You see that?
Great.
How pretty is that? It's like a little flower. And then you can, if you don't have a brush, you don't have to put egg on top. You can leave it exactly the way it is. It's absolutely fine. But if you do have egg on top, then you could, and you don't have a brush, which I'm gonna show you right now. 1 second. Okay, we're gonna take a paper towel, and I'm gonna use the other half of the egg that I had before, because I only used half in my dough, which I think is so much nicer. And I'm gonna take the paper towel and just brush it on top of it with egg. Okay? And then I made some of these yummy crumb toppings, and I'm going to, let me bring this down a little bit so you can see. I didn't make my challahs in a pan because most of you are not making it in a pan. But I would suggest if you're making challah during a humid time like now, that maybe you should put your challah into a pan. This way it doesn't spread out too much, but it just rises nicely.
Hannah, a question is, was that the dough that you started today? And it was only 10 minutes? It doesn't have to rise for an hour? It doesn't rise an hour? It does not take an hour?
So that's what I was saying before. If you're not doing the dough at a time when we are confined to a time, you can let your dough rise for an hour. You also don't have to let it rise for an hour. The people who made the dough, who made the challah last week, they let it rise afterwards. They baked it. They came out gorgeous. Everyone's challahs came out so beautiful.
The texture of the challah does not change?
No. People have this misconception that after you mix the dough, it needs to rise like an hour or two, and then you have to punch it down. We don't do any punching. We don't do any punching.
Another question: if you add Nutella or chocolate chip, about how much? About how much?
Like for let's say a piece of dough like this. This is the other half. I would add a half a cup of chocolate chips. It depends how many you like. It's very, you can also just brush the top and sprinkle chocolate chips on top of it. It's however, and if you forgot to mix it into the dough, you can mix it into the dough right now if you want. Nutella, I would probably take my dough. If I was making with Nutella, I would take my dough. I would probably cut my dough, let's say, into 2 pieces. And then I'm gonna just show that to you. I'll put it back together again. I would take my dough, spread it out like this, put a little strip of Nutella over here, but not watery, and then take the pieces of the dough and pinch them up on top like this, and then continue working with the dough again. It just makes it neat and easy.
Can you overwork a dough?
Oh, that's also a really good question. So once you braid your dough, okay, don't take it apart again and say, oh my God, my braid didn't come out good, and redo it. You should not, the yeast doesn't like to be played with like so much. I mean, obviously, if your kids are making dough and their challahs didn't come out good and they want to redo it, this is for learning purposes, and this is education, and this is their activity for the day. So you can let them do whatever they want. Also, a big thing which people don't realize, people love to taste raw dough, and there's actually nothing wrong with it. I'm just saying, raw dough is, it's not
Raw cookie dough. Raw cookie dough. Not.
It doesn't matter. Any raw dough, I'll eat. I love raw dough. I'm not eating it now, but I love raw dough. It's 11:10. Before we make the second challah, just to give people a chance to, what do you call it? I want to read you a letter that I once got from, I used to do a lot of after school programs, like with the temples, people who went to, who had after school programs, like Hebrew programs. And I would bring all the dough. The kids would make the challahs, and they would bring the challahs home and bake them at home. So I just want to read you a letter that I once got, and it gets me every time. And when I always think about what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, I think about someone like this, because it just makes it worthwhile that I can bring something fun like this into a home and bring Shabbos into people's houses. And it's just a beautiful thing. When I started my first commercial space in New City, it was so tiny, I can't even tell you. And the lady came into the store. She bought challah, she bought cake, she left, she came back, and these are the exact words that she said to me. She says, your cake and challah make Shabbat worth celebrating. And I just never forget it. It's an amazing thing. So let me just read you this. This lady her daughter was doing an after school program, and she didn't want to go alone. She seemed to have been a shy girl. And she asked her friend if her friend could join her, and she was going to pay the cover charge for her friend. I think her friend didn't have money. She says, we froze the dough that night and baked them for the following Shabbat. My dad was 91 years old and thought that the challahs were the best challahs he had ever tasted in all of his life. He said he could eat just them for a meal. He loved them so much that when he fell and ended up in Good Sam a few days later, he spoke about the last piece left in the house. When I told him that he should have eaten it and that I would bring it to the hospital, his response was this: no, I couldn't eat it. They're so good, they were meant to be shared. He died a few hours later, but that wasn't the end of the story. I always crack up when I always break up when I read this. Days later, while sitting Shiva, my cousin, whom I had not seen since we were children, called. He asked if I needed anything. Being that he's a chef, I trusted that anything he brought would be fine and said so. To say I was shocked was an understatement when my cousin walked in with 2 challahs from the Challah Fairy.
Oh, wow.
All I could think of was my father's last words. They're so good, they were meant to be shared. I thought you should know the blessing that was bestowed upon us by our attendance to this event. We cannot thank you and the Challah Fairy enough for this deep and touching spiritual experience. How nice is that?
That's great. That's very funny.
Those are the things that make whatever I do worth my time, worth my effort. I've done a lot of different baking events, but it's just amazing every single time when I do it. I want to, okay, we're gonna do now the challah that's gonna be oval shaped, and I want to teach everyone how to make how to braid a challah that's in four strands. And the reason why 4 strands is nice, it's similar to 6, but it's 4. And when you make it with 4 strands, your challah gets a little bit more height. It's not a flat piece of dough. I mean, obviously, if we had more time, I could show you how to braid a 5 challah, which is also very, very easy. A 6 challah is a little bit more complicated, but I'm going to show you now a 4 braided challah. And before anybody decides to slice up their challah and to destroy it, I want to show you a special Challah Fairy tip. When we make our 4 braided challahs, or any of our challahs that are regular braided, we don't cut them into 4 pieces. We do cut them into 4 pieces, but we keep them attached on the top. So we cut them in half like this, okay, like this, almost attached on the top, like this. And then we cut each piece again, and we cut it as close to the top as possible. But this way we don't have to, we don't have to pinch the tops. They're already together. And I once had one of my workers who did this, and I can't take credit for it, but see, here we go. We have 4 pieces. See, but they're all attached. Now, there's a key. It's very, very simple, okay? We're always doing 2 over 2, 1 over 1, switch sides. So it's 2 over 2, 2 over 2, 1 over 1, switch sides. Now, for people who are doing this for the first time, I always say, hold the 2 pieces in your 2 hands so that you know which pieces we're working with. So I think everyone can see this, right? Sherry, you could see this, right?
Yep.
Okay. So here we're starting with this side. I'm doing it in the opposite direction so you could see. These 2 we're working with this side. So we're going 2, this is the second, 2 over 2, and 1 over 1. You see that? 2 over 2, 1 over 1. Now we're working with this side. Here, these are the 2. You always have to remember, even if one of them is all the way up here or one of them is here, you have to work with the 2 that are there. So we have these 2. This is the second. Set 2 over 2, 1 over 1. Okay? It might look messy, but it's not. Look, 2 over 2, 1 over 1. Now we're back on this side. One second. I want to see if I could raise this up a little bit more. Just one second here. Okay, much better. Okay, we're on this side. We're going again here. 2 over 2, 1 over 1. And then we go back here. We have these 2 over here. We have the second, 2 over 2, 1 over 1. And then we're back here on this side, 2 over 2, 1 over 1. And then we take them all and we tuck them all in underneath, and we have this beautiful, stunning challah. Now, if you braided the challah and you don't like the way it came out, don't rebraid it. It's really not necessary. By the time it rises and by the time you bake it, they're all going to look beautiful and they're all going to look the same. Okay,
And they taste the same.
And they taste the same. And the other thing is that I also wanted to say is when you, what was I going to say? Oh, if you want to practice this, as I said, it's 2 over 2, 1 over 1. Take 4 different socks. Take long, different colored socks, like from your husband or from you or whatever. 2 black, 2 white. Pinch them on top with like a safety pin and practice with them.
Good idea.
It's really, really easy and it's a lot of fun. If you want to make this with 6, then you could do, instead of doing 2 over 2, 1 over 1, you do 2 over 3, 1 over 2. But I don't want to complicate it. I don't want to get you crazy. You can also go anytime to Google, to YouTube, and type in braiding a 4 braided challah. It'll give you the same instructions. So this is really, look at the height. It's not like, one second. Look at the height. It's not like it's, and you know what? I just want to tell you, when I made this last week with the whole egg, it's a very small amount of flour that we used. So because we're only using 3 cups of flour, I just feel like because we only used half an egg, it made a big difference in the way that the dough looks. It just looks beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful dough. And if you decide that you want to make pizza with this dough, either eliminate the sugar or instead of putting in a half a cup of sugar, just put in a teaspoon of sugar in order to activate the yeast. So there are multitudes of things that you can do with an easy yeast. You can also take this dough, you can eliminate the salt, and you could use this dough and roll it out and make chocolate babka. You can roll out the dough and you could spread Nutella over the whole thing and roll it up like a roulade, like a rolled up cake. And because this is such a beautiful dough to work with, you don't have to look around for other recipes for other dough. This is just so amazing. If you find that this is the first time you're baking dough, you're making challah and you're making dough and you didn't do it right, try it again. It's not a ton of ingredients. It can't go bad. As long as you activate your yeast properly, and you can leave your yeast for like 10, 15 minutes in order for it to bubble up and to start fermenting. It's an amazing, it's just so beautiful.
2 things. People thought your sock idea of practicing was brilliant. Wanted to let you know. And when you leave the yeast to rise, you put it in glass. Is that what you use rather than a metal container? Is it better to put the dough in glass when it rises? Oh,
no. I just made it in glass so that you could see it from the outside.
But it doesn't matter.
Totally not. I actually make every Thursday night now. I make sourdough dough, and I only make them in aluminum. I don't make them in glass. Okay. I think that's a myth.
It looks pretty, but for us, right.
It does, it does. I want to give you guys instructions on baking this, okay? If you leave this in a warm space, you could leave it there now for 2 hours. 2 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours, as soon as you feel it's ready. Now, I like to tell people to bake their challahs at 325 instead of 350, because I don't know how everyone's oven is. 350 I just find is a little bit too high. If you bake it at 325 for 35 to 40 to 45 minutes, always bake it in the middle rack. Don't bake it on the bottom. It's going to be too close to the heat source. Don't bake it on top because then it's going to be too far away. Just try to make it in the middle shelf, on the middle shelf. If you decide you want to bake this tomorrow, right before Shabbat, you could take this dough and you could put it into the refrigerator. It might rise a little bit, but it will stop rising. And then tomorrow, take it out, leave it on the counter for 2 hours. It will rise, and then you'll bake it just like you would bake it today. Or you could take the dough, put it in the freezer like it is, wait till it's frozen a little bit, and then put it into a plastic bag or Ziploc bag. If you put it into the Ziploc bag right now and then put it in the freezer, it's going to start rising a little bit, and then some of the top might stick to the bag, and then you're going to have to band-aid it and take off some of the skin. I want to do that. And I'm just like so happy to be here with everyone, and I think we have a really, really big group of people. Go ahead.
Okay, question. Do you have a recipe for when you want to use 5 pounds of flour, or you just multiply what you have?
So,
in terms of this,
this is not the actual recipe that I use in the store, because I had to modify it a little bit for purposes of making an at-home challah. If you want to, I can modify this and send you a recipe for the 5 pounds. Absolutely.
Okay. If you would like to use honey, how much to put in it? How much would you use?
Something like this?
Yeah,
I would say between a 1/4 cup and a 1/3 cup of honey. It's really somebody's individual taste, and you can add the honey when you do the yeast, because it will help it also.
And do you bake it on parchment or silicone mat? Or
I don't have any silicone mats. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say. I bake it on parchment.
Okay.
I'm baking it on parchment, and if you want to, you could sprinkle a drop of flour onto the parchment so that it will not stick at all.
I think we've answered all the questions so far. I think you've done a great job.
Wow,
Anything else you'd like to share?
Is there anything else I'd like to share? I'll just share some random things. Because COVID has been such a horrible and depressing situation for a lot of people, I just first of all want to say that I'm extremely, extremely thankful to have incredible children who have been helping me out. I could not be existing right now without them. No, I'm just so extremely thankful. And and every single week, besides for the small amount of challah that we bake in the store, I just find that I can't just tell my girls to come in for 4 or 5 hours. It's not fair to them. So every week we make approximately an extra 100 challahs, and I distribute them to 2 people in Rockland County, and they have people coming to their homes who are going through tough, challenging times, and they give the challahs out to different people. I have a woman who comes to my store every single Wednesday morning from an organization called People to People. She brings bags of food to 15 Holocaust survivors, and each bag comes with a challah sponsored by the Challah Fairy. And before the holiday of Shavuos, I had a sponsor who helped me out with the sponsorship, but we sponsored 1,000 challahs for special families in Rockland County. I don't know, I'm sure you didn't hear about it, but there's an organization, well, the organization you might have heard about, it's called Tomchei Shabbos, and they bring food packages every single week to approximately 1,000 families in Muncie who are going through financial hardships. But before the holiday of Shavuos, which comes out 7 weeks after Passover, they had a note that went around, no questions asked. It had to be people who really needed, and they had 3 sponsors who sponsored food for 1,500 families. They took Boulder Stadium. I went there because I brought them 520 challahs, and we gave out a plain challah and a crumb challah to the first 260 families who came. I didn't want to give one challah to each person. I wanted to give 2 challahs to each person, and I was giving out another 500 challahs afterwards to other families. And if you would have seen Boulder Stadium, they had different spaces with cases of grape juice. Each person got a case of assorted meats. Each person got a case of assorted dairy products. Each person got vegetables. They got pastas. I can't even tell you, it was something amazing. And to be a part of, I called up the man who runs the program, and I said, Alan, I want to donate challah. And he's like, how'd you find out about this? I said, I called up the supermarket because they made it seem as if it was a supermarket event. And he's like, don't tell anybody, it's a secret. He said, we have 3 sponsors. He said, I have to get permission from the sponsors to allow you to give the challah. Because, you know, maybe they don't like my kashrut, maybe don't like my rabbi, whatever. And he called me back and he said, it's going to be amazing. And we went, my people came in on Sunday. We baked for them 520 challahs, and it was an amazing event. I also donate challahs to an organization called Kosher Troops. I don't know if you ever heard of Kosher Troops. Kosher Troops was started by a woman in Rockland County who, in honor of her daughter's bat mitzvah, she sent out packages to our Jewish troops all over the world. And after she started that, she had to continue it because she did something so amazing. So a woman came to my house, the woman who runs it came to my house last week. She says, people are requesting your challah. She sends out my challah to Afghanistan. She sent out to Iraq, to all over the world. My challahs go to people. They sent me pictures of them in different places having my challah. I know it takes a long time to get there, and I know that they have no place to warm it up, but it makes them so happy.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you, and for the stories and
amazing.
For your Gitta Neshama. It sounds so good. You're doing such nice things.
Thank you so much.
And this was lovely. We have one question. When you bake in your store, do you use preservatives? Somebody wanted to know.
No. There's only 7 ingredients in challah. There are no preservatives: water, flour, salt, yeast, eggs, oil, and egg and love. We put a lot of
love.
Everything.
And love, and good. We thank you. We not only got to learn how to make challah, but we got to learn about Hanali. And we love this. It was really great. And I think that we're all going to taste our challahs here, and maybe we'll come and visit you at your store to do a comparison test.
Amazing.
So the Challah Fairy is a new
And if anyone has any questions.
Nice and easy. I don't know if there's any other questions.
No, but anyone can email me a question, or they can call me if they have a problem.
Okay, I know that you're going to send out, we're going to get the cauliflower recipe that you had promised. That would be great.
Yeah, love to.
And it was really fun. And, you know, we thank you. Oh, how long to rise? I think we've answered that.
An hour, 2 hours, whenever you feel like it has like a little like bounce to it. When you touch it, it just like bounces back.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything.
And if anyone wants to send, if anyone wants to send you pictures of the finished product, you know,
that would be great. You
could sprinkle your challah with an everything mix. You could sprinkle the top of it with poppy seeds, with oregano, with pizza mix. You could do anything with it. And of course, it makes the best French toast. Best French toast ever.
Okay, I think that's great. And if they want to get in contact with you, they'll call the store.
No, right? When I sent you out the ingredients, it has my cell number on the bottom.
Wow.
Anyone can call me.
Can you use regular flour, or does it have to be bread flour? One question
bread
more.
Flour, 100%. It makes a huge difference. I think
Amazing.
I put that in the ingredients: high gluten flour, bread flour. By the way, King Arthur
Yes.
flour makes an amazing bread flour. And the flour that they sell now in Costco, they sell a big 10-pound bag of King Arthur flour. It says on it that it can be used for bread. I actually bought a bag here to test it out. Try to use a bread flour. It has a higher gluten and a higher protein level in the flour.
Okay. And I think we've got it all. We are going to send out to everybody on here. We're going to send out the additional cauliflower recipe. We're going to send out a link to the Federation in case you would like to be to make a donation to Federation, especially during this time where we have a matching grant, which would be really nice. Your money doubles, and that would be great. We're going to send out a link to everybody. And we do have many more virtual events coming up, so please check for emails coming your way and come join us again. And we thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hanali. I want to know, you got into the challah business because your name is Hanali. Is that
no, because I love giving things to people. I love making other people happy.
I know, but your name is so connected to challah. It's almost the same thing.
It's not really. My mother is Swiss in Switzerland. My mother is Swiss. In Switzerland, everything ends with Lee. That's why I'm called Hanali.
And if you thank you. And we will also include your cell number because I don't think somebody has it, and we're going to include that also.
Perfect. Awesome.
All right. And if you have any other questions, send them in. Maybe we can get you to answer them at another time.
Perfect. Love to.
Thank you very much, everybody. Stay safe. Have a Shabbat Shalom, and you have delicious challah to taste this weekend.
So Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Be well.